What video game will always be nostalgic for you? I first dove into this game during a summer at my grandma's house. This was my only game that her computer could run, and it was more than enough. The core gameplay is rock solid. Like, merry-go-round, drink stall, hamburger stall, bathroom, that's how you start out. Let's fucking go. It's been more than 20 years, and I think I've restarted the campaign once every year or 3, since then, because it's just so easy to fall back into. Maybe I get a dozen parks in before another game catches my eye, or, maybe I don't even finish Forest Frontiers before I get distracted. Either way, it's the old reliable. I have RCT Classic on my phone, now, which is nice, but, it really doesn't scratch that same itch. The UI is as amazing as they could make it, and it's still just not as satisfying as playing it the way Chris Sawyer trademark intended it. Speaking of which, RCT2 and OpenRCT2 are equally as fantastic, but, honestly, I prefer just classic RCT with the expansions. Children screaming. Wave. Our faves were proximity mines in the library. Our friend Brandon, think Eric Cartman, only so fat he fell through the floor of his mobile home, hated proxy mines because they required no skill and he grinned that game, beat that game on all settings. He could expert kill you with remote mines and timer mines. Didn't think it was fair that we, lesser skilled players, could use proxy mines to kill. Refused any game that was set to proxy mine. One game we were beating him. We got smart and decided that instead of Battle Royale, we needed to team up against him. He unplugged our controllers. This led to another form of the game, Task Hunt. Task Hunt, from the Deep Space Nine episode Captive Pursuit, one player is Task, others chase after Task. Winner is who kills Task the most time. Task wins if he has the most kills. When Brandon was Task we set to proxy mines because fuck you Task. Brandon was the only Task to win. Red Alert 2. So over the top and silly with less base micromanagement than StarCraft, though I did play the crap out of that too. Half-Life 2. The first real modern FPS I played. Coming from UT98, the graphics made my jaw drop. Something about the atmosphere and movement and combat really clicked too. I played a lot of HL2DM back in the day. My two top picks, though with special mention to Neverhood, the silly soundtrack never gets old, Diablo 2, click 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 click, oh you want a build that sends a wave of 50 bone teeth every time you attack, no problem, and Dune 2000, which was really just another CNC but with sandworms. Very much a PC biased list because my parents refused to buy me a console, but PC gaming was all fair. This is absolutely the one for me. I was 6 to 7 years old when my family fled from war in Yugoslavia, and we stayed with relatives in Vienna. The kid had a NES with SMB3. It was pure magic. We struggled so long to clear the first jump, but soon we got into the groove. When we settled down in Sweden, my parents saved up money and bought me a NES with SMB3 for my birthday, and I literally couldn't believe it. I thought they had borrowed it from someone to let me play over the weekend. I didn't have many games, so I beat SMB3 over and over again. I'm now in my mid-30s, and no birthday gift will ever beat that, and SMB3 is the game that made me a lifetime gamer. River City Ransom. I remember the night that I first rented it, not long after its release in 1990. It was a Thursday night and I was in the 2nd grade. It was the first time my mother had ever made tacos, so after filling up on crunchy Ortega shells and old El Paso beef seasoning which felt like something from the scorched depths of Tijuana itself to my Puritan palate, I plopped down in front of the TV, sat on the creaky wooden floor and had at it. I had selected the game because my parents had recently purchased a copy of West Side Story from one of those get 10 movies for 1 cent deals that were prevalent at the time, and I'd fallen in love with the film's aesthetic and setting. The box art for River City Ransom reminded me a lot of the Rumble Under the Highway sequence, so I grabbed it up as my weekend's entertainment. To this day it remains one of my all-time favorite games and I'll never forget that night. Aside from the tacos and the game, there really wasn't anything special about it, but I think it's special that I remember that feeling, especially among the countless others that I've entirely forgotten. Red Dead Redemption. I never played video games much. When I was younger, my older brother played them a lot. We were close but never really had similar lifestyles. We just had different interests. But late in the evenings he'd be playing video games and I'd want to sit down, so I'd hang out with him and watch him play video games. I actually enjoyed just watching but never played much myself. He ended up dying in a car accident. It was rough. When going through his things we came across the gaming stuff, a computer and various PS consoles. Nobody in my family cared for them, but I wanted to keep his gaming stuff despite my mediocre interest in actual gaming. It was just a way we spent time together and I knew he loved his games. I didn't actually touch much of it for a long time, but one day it was raining out and I couldn't do much, so I thought I should fire up some video games. I looked through his games. I had heard of RDR but never played it and thought that I should check it out. OMG. I fell in love. I've never played a game that I thought was so much fun. I played it so much. I finally finished it and RDR2 was already out, so I decided to go buy it. It was another rainy day, I just thought it was a good idea. I love RDR2 and have played through it already. I'm doing it again now. As I said, I'm not even much of a gamer, but damn it, I wish I could talk with my brother about this game. I know he'd be so proud of me for my accomplishments in my own life and I really wish he was here. But damn it, I would love to play that game with him. Capone and Pinball Dreams on the Amiga. My parents were in constant competition and it was awesome. King's Quest 2 because we got stuck killing the snake, then I figured it out early one morning and got to loudly announce it to the household. Ports of Call. My granddad had a full-blown diary of buy and sell prices for his cargo. Also, the CD version of Carmen Sandiego and Lexi Cross, which he loved and we enjoyed playing together. Interceptor, because I eventually managed to land on the carrier. Wings, Secret Weapons of the Luftwaffe and Wings of Fury, because those were the games my best friend and I would huddle around a PC and play together. Duke Nukem 3D, Descent and Warcraft 2, those were the game we first started playing networked with friends. Delta Force Land Warrior, COD4, SWAT4, Viet Cong, Battlefield, Rainbow Six and Ghost Recon, because when I moved interstate, those were the games that kept me connected to family and friends. Edit, and Sparkle Unleashed, which I didn't play, but was the first game to make my wife kick me off the PlayStation so she could, in her words, game for a bit. Carmageddon. Back when that game came out, I was in college. Me and a group of friends all used to have LAN parties most weekends at a buddy's house. Honestly, it was the happiest time of my life. We'd stay up all night playing Carmageddon, fueled up on pizza and booze. We all had decent gaming PCs, 3DFX cards had just become a thing, and we spent hours playing that game multiplayer, as well as stuff like Quake 2, Half-Life, etc., and just laughed our asses off. Hours and hours. In the morning my friend's mom would always cook us a big breakfast and the gaming would continue into the day. My friend's mom since passed away, and his brother, who used to game with us, also died. It seems hard to believe sometimes. But being shut in a couple of rooms with great friends playing video games, and especially Carmageddon, was just so much fun. Terraria, well, it's a fight between Terraria and Minecraft, since I was born in 2007 and have not had the pleasures of enjoying early 2000s games as something to play, or really any game before 2007. I will say though, Terraria had always kind of stuck with me throughout my early childhood years. It helped me through the depression of my family by distracting me from the arguments behind my parents when I was little. It distracted me through all the school stress and everything. I can proudly say that Terraria will forever be my favorite game. No game that nobody makes can ever change that. Well, maybe perhaps Friday Night Funkin', but that's just my go-to game when I'm bored, so yeah, I'll just go with Terraria. I remember when that game came to the US. If you ordered a year subscription to Nintendo Power starting in January 1991, you got a free copy or Dragon Warrior and all the stuff you needed to beat the game. I had a classmate who was pissed. We all had our copies of Dragon Warrior and our Nintendo Power magazines. He had none. He got the same offer we all had, but Nintendo advertised the game as a game pack, which the cartridges were all labeled as game packs, and his mom didn't believe it was a video game, just ads and tips for a game he would insist she buy for him, so she threw it all away. War crimes, and the fact that your school programs don't talk about it. As a European, I sincerely think this is unbelievable. And even more when we know that it's not only World War II but also for the First Sino-Japanese War. After doing a little bit of research, I found out that Japan government had a victimization policy when it comes to educate young Japanese people about their history. I like your country, your culture, your aesthetics and all, but damn, I mean, y'all are such a non-honest country about what you did and what were your errors. Also, we all know Japan is a very racist country. I mean, people always says it's cultural, but by definition it's racism. There is a French YouTube guy who is living in Japan since 2002, I think, something like that, and recently he did a video about that, and it looks like it's more than a real problem in Japan how they are closed and hateful to others. It's a generality, not everyone is like that, but the majority of the people are. I deeply respect science and technology in Japan, their work is awesome, but I don't like the fact that Japan want to rely on robots and not humans in the future. Their demography is absolutely fucked up and they just don't care about it. And hikikomori is more than a problem, you must take care of this too. Internationally, Japan is always seen as a nice, lovely and cute country full of gentle people, but I don't think so. It's a deeply imperialistic country, extremely nationalistic. Even recently, just look at Attack of Titans and the subtext of it. Why, the most perfect place on earth, of course. The birthplace of anime, the single most true-to-life form of entertainment ever conceived by man. The land where everyone carries katanas on their person, where all schoolgirls are hot chicks with boobs 10 times larger than their whole bodies and equally astronomically huge asses that counteract the Hooters weight. Where the highways are filled to the brim with automotive legends such as the Nissan Skyline, the Toyota Supra, the Mazda RX-7, and the champion of them all, the AE86 Sprinter Trueno. Japan, the land where no matter who you fuck, whether it is an underage girl, the entire planet, your sister, your brother, your dog, or a pillow, nobody gives a shit, and rape is the most effective way to settle a dispute. Who needs courtrooms when you can just rape, am I right? The land of the most morally righteous people in the world can be found in Japan, for they never committed any horrible atrocities whatsoever throughout its entire recorded history, or if they did any, that was just propaganda spewed by the ungodly leftist West. Every morning they wake up to listen to their glorious national anthem, Baka Mitai, and hentai is on TV first thing after that. To sum it up, Japan is, was, always will be the place to be. I visited a very remote part of Japan, so I think my experience was quite different from that of a lot of Westerners who go there, but the thing that really struck me was how willing people were to try and interact/converse with me, despite the fact that I only knew about 10 words of Japanese, and 99.9% of the time they spoke zero English. The memory that always immediately pops into my head is somehow making friends with a middle-aged fisherman and his wife at a street festival in the village we were staying in. The movie Frozen was super popular there at the time, and we somehow communicated that I had never seen it, and so they insisted that we go back to their house to watch it with them, and they were so excited to give us a tour of their little home and for us to try all of their favorite movie snacks, and it was just extremely wholesome and sweet. A few months later, back in Canada, I was in a Disney store for some reason and I had my mind absolutely blown by hearing the English version of Let It Go, because up until that point I had only ever heard it sung in Japanese. Beauty, respect, ceremony. I've never been there, but as a kid, watching Karate Kid 2, everything about the culture touched my little girl soul with the yearning for such things. The tea ceremony, done with such reverence and simple beauty, opened up the ancient and eternal in my heart. Recently, the beauty brand Tatcha came onto the scene, and the skincare products are truly a beautiful ritual, including a rice enzyme mixed in a small bowl with a brush. I've been a student of World War II history and have read a great deal about Japan. There are certainly problems with a society that venerates honor to the point of suicide and elevates the whole over the individual. But the other side of that is the honor, it is having a place in a family, elders are respected. I have come to realize as an adult that the US is not the mecca of superiority that I was taught growing up. In fact, whilst I am grateful and content with what I have in life, I look at the way other cultures live and yearn at times for something different. This may sound ignorant or offensive, but I'm worried. A friend of mine went to Tokyo a couple years ago and later told me how strange some of her experiences were. She saw a group of schoolgirls talking in public and one of them laughed out loud enough to be audible for other people around, which immediately made her apologize over and over again. That, coupled with some stuff I read about how the entertainment in Japan goes into extreme places at times because of how repressed they are in their day-to-day lives, really stuck with me because I can't verify it, but it makes sense to me. Anime, especially shonen, not sure if that's how you spell it, often has dialogue that's mostly exclamations and really over the top. It often feels disconnected from how humans actually behave and seems intended to convey extreme emotion, but it doesn't. I used to watch a lot of anime as a lonely kid, but when I came back to some of the old shows I used to watch, I couldn't help but wonder if the people who wrote them had a healthy amount of normal interaction with people. This tendency to extremes is something I observed in myself as I struggled with mental illness. Of course, one could just say haven't been there so I don't know or understand their culture, but the fact that something is part of culture doesn't mean that it's good, and there's been numerous articles about loneliness and depression being a major concern in Japan. I ought to got there one day and see for myself. Maybe I'm connecting dots that aren't there, and that would be fine, because there's no doubt that Japanese culture has gifted us with some awesome stuff, some of which I enjoy to this day. But still, it's something my mind comes back to every once in a while. Depends on why I thought about it. I went there for tourism, know a bit of the culture, got friends who work there too, even one who came back after marrying a Japanese woman and having a child, because they didn't want their child to grow there. It is very different from other cultures. While a lot of people are going to note how crazy they can be due to various TV shows and the manga/games culture, this is their way of release pressure from a society that literally destroys individuals and force people to always wear a mask. I was really impressed by how everything seems to be in order and how people will absolutely not cross rules, not even bend them, how their trains are always perfectly on time, how even ticket controllers go through the Shinkansen with pride and bow to people. And I'd love to get that everywhere, except I am absolutely not ready for the human cost of such system. And don't get me started on maid cafes, or the role of women in that society. Was visiting Japan around 10 years ago. After a night of drinking and checking out different bars in central Tokyo, at around 5 a.m. or so, we had decided to just walk around some parks. Deep in one of these parks was a 100-strong set of camping tents that seemed to almost create some sort of old forest village. We gathered that this was a community of homeless people and thought that they were probably out of luck and unemployed, as is the case in most Western countries when you become homeless. Moments later we saw a guy rise out of a cardboard box from the bushes in full suit and tie and a case. He just casually started walking at a brisk pace towards the numerous office buildings surrounding the park. The absurdity of the situation has stuck in my head ever since then, and that will always be the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of Japan.